Welcome to Living Your Greatness. Each episode, we bring on great people to inspire you to achieve your greatness. We discuss topics all related to health and wellness. Listen to world-class stories, learn valuable lessons, and turn knowledge into action. It is now time for you to unlock your inner greatness. Welcome back, everyone, to Living Your Greatness. This is your host, Ben Mummy, and today we have a new guest to the show, and her name is Jen Beauchesne. So for those of you who don't know Jen, she is the race director of Beau's 5K for Ovarian Cancer within Canada. And in 2006, she helped her family start up Beau's Brewery, a multi-award winning craft brewery. Jen is currently working on Beau's marketing team as a communications specialist. Jen also has a BA from York University and studied Brewing Technology at the Seibel Institute in Chicago. She is the author and contributing editor of more than a dozen guidebooks for women entrepreneurs. Beau's makes some of the tastiest organic craft beer. So I wanted to find out who was behind all this beer making magic. So Jen, welcome to the show. It is great to have you on today.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me.
Awesome. Okay, so Jen, let's kind of get going here. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you spend your formative years growing up in Canada? What motivated you to help your family start a craft brewery? And why are you responsible for the marketing and communications side with the company?
Sure. I don't know if I had formative years. They were all formative. I feel like I'm still forming, but my whole family, we started out north of Toronto. It was a little place back then. It's a bigger place now called Holland Landing. And we moved here. My dad had an opportunity to actually become an entrepreneur for the first time out here working for the textile industry. So obviously the whole family followed along, and that's how we ended up in this area. I went away to school and came back. I decided to say screw everything and go try to become a professional snowboarder in Calgary. So I moved out there and worked crappy jobs and just spent all my time at Sunshine Village and living this kind of the ski bum life. And then I heard that my brother and my dad had concocted this plan to start a microbrewery, and had my mom was going to be involved, and my brother Bill was going to be involved, and my dad Tim and my brother Steve, and the whole idea of my entire family getting together and starting this brewery, and me being out living in Calgary. It was like, no, I can't let that happen. So packed everything back up and did what I said I would never do, which was leave my beloved Alberta and come back to the little town that I was very happy to slam the door on when I was a teenager. So yeah, came back here. I got involved kind of out of the gate because I'm working in publishing and editing. So I helped out just in a volunteer capacity for the brewery. I would write press releases for them, get paid in beer, which was wonderful. So I've been involved with the marketing and communication end of things since since the brewery started, but it didn't become a full-time role until 2015, and kind of jumped on board in a larger capacity at that time, which was good timing because 2015 was kind of the start of I don't know, I would say like our halcyon glory years where, everybody was buying craft beer and there was, we were the big kids on campus in the craft beer scene. We, 2016, we sold the brewery to the employees. 2017, we did the 150th anniversary of Canada with Ottawa 2017. So it was really good to have a communication person in place at that time. Since then, we've had COVID and we've been doing diddly squat other than surviving. So the need for a communication person has not been as intense in the last year and a half but that's been really helpful because it's allowed me to sort of shift some of my attention to policy planning and everything that we needed to survive and thrive during COVID. So it's I guess everything happens for a reason.
Absolutely.
That's the 3-minute version. Around the campfire, there's lots more stories to tell, but that's sort of the 3-minute version. I'm the oldest sibling, just sort of like where I fit in. Steve's a little bit younger than me, and then Phil's 5 or 6 years younger than me. And my dad, Tim, and my mom, Denise, were both involved in the brewery out of the gate. And I think there's like 7 Beauchesnes with the brewery right now. Like my cousin Mike, my cousin Dave, my sister-in-law Laura. I don't want to forget anybody because that would be jerky, but that's like the least of it. So it's kind of fun.
Awesome. That's great. Thanks for sharing a bit of that background as well as who's kind of involved. So Jen, how did your family go from running a long-standing textile company to a successful craft brewing company in Van Cleek Hill?
Well, they say necessity is the mother of invention. The textile industry was really going predominantly overseas, and my dad ended up being one of the last people standing within his industry, but it just, there wasn't really a future. And so was looking at different options that he owned this building that I'm in right now. And he was looking at other options. He was thinking about starting maybe a paintball facility or a recycling facility, and craft brewing also came up. But he was 55, and he was like, you know what? I'm 55. I haven't done a job that I've loved in my entire life, and now I want to do something that's fun. And this is what he came up with, along with between me and my brother, both kind of advised him a little bit on it. Steve did the business plan, and my dad stomped around Ottawa with my brother Phil, and we had to get these letters of commitment from the bars. So with Dad and Phil going into bars and asking people, I don't have a beer, but if I did, and let's say that beer tasted really good because they don't have a sample, would you be willing to sign this piece of paper that says you would buy it from me? Because that's what the banks want. So, and they got a ton of letters. It was amazing. Like, I don't know. They're both kind of snake oil salesman-esque when it comes to talking to people. So anyway, they got all those letters of commitments, and we got the bank to sign on at a really difficult time for craft beer. There were more craft breweries going out of business than starting up back in 2005 when we were trying to get all this off the ground. So that was it. And we poured our first pint of lug tread on July 1st, 2006. The missing piece, the missing link is that none of us actually are brewers by trade. So that's usually the next question people have is, who makes the beer? And we were lucky enough to have Matthew O'Hara join us very early on. He had moved to the area. There were no craft breweries in the area, so he was just planning on changing careers, but he'd been working at a Toronto craft brewery, and he'd been working in the industry for some time. And he heard that we were getting started, and he said, well, I've got this sweet little recipe for this golden lagered ale that I've been playing around with. And that's what became our lug tread 15 years ago.
Awesome. Great.
Yeah.
So Jen, in 2007, so a year after you opened, my father would drive to Ottawa. He noticed a sign on Highway 417, and he was so curious that he decided to come by to try a craft beer at Beau's. That was how my family heard about Beau's Brewery. Something that my family always admired was that Beau's is a proud environmental leader in sustainable craft brewing. In fact, Beau's is the first certified B-Corp brewery in Canada. So this brings me to my question: what inspired Beau's to have sustainability as a core value for the business?
There's a lot of good reasons to make sustainable choices in business. I think that you attract better employees because people feel good about the business that they're working for, affiliated with. I think it's good marketing. Your customers feel good about buying your beer. I think Steve's vision, kind of out of the gate, was that breweries kind of have a history, especially in Europe, where every little town would have its own brewery, of being a cornerstone in the community. Your local brewery could be with sort of like, every community had a brewery, every community had a church, and you could count on your local brewery. If there was a problem, there was a disaster, your brewery was part of the community. And the idea of being good stewards towards the environment made sense for us. Just, you need a healthy community. Unhealthy communities don't drink beer. So I think it's completely embedded in the business of what we do. There's value to choosing the right thing. We normally, and I've heard Steve talk about it, kind of like it was the right thing to do. We did it because it was the right thing to do. I think ethics it is at the heart of what we do. I think all of us kind of grew up, me, Steve, and Phil, and feeling like big business is evil. And in order to become entrepreneurs, we kind of had to come to terms with how do we rationalize joining business, becoming big business in a way that doesn't compromise those values. And finding B-Corp was kind of a cool way to do that, where we were actually allowed to rewrite our incorporation papers so that we did not exist primarily for the sole purpose of creating profit for our shareholders. And that's what all corporations exist strictly for that purpose, unless you are able to kind of embed different values to your business. So that's what we did in 2016, and it was really just sort of making formal the ways that we wanted Beau's to continue to operate. Like if that's going to put more profit in our pockets, but ultimately the people are going to be negatively impacted, or the planet's going to be negatively impacted. Well, that's super short-sighted of us in a lot of ways, because you're killing the future of your business by not behaving responsibly in the present.
Absolutely. So this actually leads me to my next question. The Beau's Brewery always seemed to attract a lot of people. It became a stopping point for travelers between Ottawa and Montreal, which is a very unique thing for a brewery. What do you believe was the selling point? Was it the beer, the brand, or its customer relations?
I'd say all three. Is that an option? Can I pick all three?
Absolutely.
You got to have a good product. You got to have a good beer to keep people coming back and wanting to try something new. I think the innovation was a part of it too. Like, people knew anytime they came to the brewery, there was going to be something new for them to try. It was going to be, some brewed with some wacky herbs, or, something new and exciting. And then I really do think that we attracted good people. We hired good people who kind of like our company values include like having fun, and we want people to have fun at work, because when people come to the brewery and they're having that experience, and they kind of feel like they're hanging out in a fun environment. So if our team's not having a good time, then our customers aren't having a good time either. So I think having all those things all together, and the brand being, the branding was a big part of it. I think that got the recognition. But yeah, I think in terms of like attracting people and getting people to want to come to the brewery, I think fairly early on, Steve and our customer, we had a customer experience manager at that time, and they went down to Disney and they took the Disney course on customer engagement. And they learned a few new tips and tricks, but at the same time, it really reinforced that we had sort of done a lot of Disney-esque things without even knowing that that was part of their course or part of their, training for their people. So it was like, okay, well, this is cool. Like we're doing 50% of things right. We're already giving people a very Disney experience when they come to the brewery. We knew we were in the middle of nowhere, so we had to like give people a reason to come to Van Cleek Hill. And I always tell people that, like, if you're going to take the time to do the drive out, I want to make sure that you don't leave feeling like it was you wanted that time back.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. So this moves me to my next question. Apart from having a business that offers quality beer, Beau's understands the importance of building a great team culture and a healthy work environment, making a real effort to bring out the best in each employee. Your employees are treated like family rather than a number. Your brand understands the importance of connecting with each employee on a deeper level. I believe that is one of the reasons your business has been so successful. Putting the person before the employee is something a lot of businesses fail at doing. What is Beau's secret sauce when it comes to motivating and engaging your employees?
I think the secret sauce is kind of the idea that because we really started as family and friends, it wasn't sales rep so and so was out on the road today and I don't know, dropped a case of beer on his foot or whatever. It's like, oh my God, no, Jamie dropped a case of beer on his foot, and I've known Jamie since grade 2. Like when you start with those close connections, as we added more people into the fold, there was still this at the heart of it, starting with just friends and family. And then everybody, as we folded them in, kind of, I think, felt like they were being, I hope felt like they're being folded into the family. And, you can't have 100% fit when it comes to that. I mean, most people don't even get along necessarily with their own families. So, but yeah, I think that and the, in 2016, kind of making shares available to the employees, I think kind of put the money where your mouth is when it's, if you're a family and friends brewery, why do only this set of people own shares? Right from the beginning, we opened up buying shares to the employees, but as we grew, it kind of got pushed to the side, and then we started that back up in 2016. So, and still the case, so employees can continue to become employee owners instead of just employees. And then you've got people acting like owners and thinking like owners, and that's good for everybody. So
Absolutely, for sure. Definitely builds a lot more motivation. So tell us more about the weekly brainstorming sessions that all employees are invited to at Beau's to come up with new beer ideas.
Well, those have switched to Zoom now. But it's still happening. It's primarily with the sales and marketing team at this point. But yeah, it's a Zoom call with 49 and a half squares, and everybody's kind of. The last time we did it, we pick a style of beer and everybody tastes it, and you go out and you buy. You go out and you buy your samples, you come back and maybe you get told to buy 2 things, and then one thing you just buy that's in that style that you just sort of caught your eye. And we talk about, why did we buy that third beer? What was it about it that caught our eye? And then we're tasting them and we're sampling them. And then sometimes we'll brainstorm ideas for the beer at the same time. So we're gonna have a beer coming out this fall called Rachel's Revenge, that's named after someone on the marketing team called Rachel, who told a funny story after we'd been sampling some of these beers about taking like a Sharpie and drawing on people's faces when they're asleep and stuff like that. And so now the can of beer has like a face on it. It's got all goofy, like a little tractor drawn on it and a Canadian flag, and like just kind of, I think the word "duh" is on there. So it's like legitimately, from the beer meeting to that's kind of a funny story. What would that look like on a beer can? And in the end, I guess it doesn't really have anything to do with the style of beer, which is, I don't know, a Beau's thing to do. Like, people keep asking me now, why is it called Rachel's Revenge? And I'm like, because it's Sharpie. This is why. It's fun, and I think it's inclusive, and people feel like, hey, you can throw in any idea you want. And doesn't mean that we're going to use every idea, because we can't, but it's just kind of built, like, brings the whole team together. And by the time that beer goes out, you remember that meeting where we named it, and you're not kind of like, oh, like, as a sales rep, here's the new brand or product that you have to sell. And it's like, well, I don't know anything about this. I don't know. I was there at that meeting. So I think it's built inclusivity, it's fun, and we get to drink beer. I think all businesses should be like that.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. So Beau's has been very successful at branding the company and its beer at community-sponsored events. In 2017, as we mentioned earlier on, Beau sponsored Canada's 150th birthday. That same year, your company brewed with breweries across the nation to honor Ottawa, the capital of Canada. What unique community events have you considered sponsoring this year?
This year has been a little different, as the pundits keep saying. With COVID, we did just wrap up the Beau's 5K for Ovarian Cancer Canada. That's our second year doing that event virtually. So by doing things virtually, people do their fundraising online. They walk their 5K or 10K or 3K or run it by themselves in their community. They do their own fundraising. So we had to, when we weren't able, that event traditionally takes place at the brewery, down a dirt road that runs out from the brewery and out and back. It's my favorite day of the year at the brewery. It is the busiest day of the year at the brewery. But we made it work again this year from a virtual point of view. And I like that event because 100% of the funds raised, we don't charge, like, we donate beer, we donate prizes and stuff like that. So we raised $53,000 this year for Ovarian Cancer Canada. It was $42,000 last year, but that sounds almost like $100,000 in that range for an event that legitimately didn't take place. That's, I would say, probably going to be our biggie for this year. We've had to take a hard look at Oktoberfest. I think we are going to be doing that online this year again. But, we're still kind of getting, like, the asks for the gift baskets and, this golf tournament and that. We just make it a point to say yes anytime that we can. And it's easier to say yes than to say no. And it's just better. And it's, I don't know. That was sort of our attitude out of the gate, when all these community organizations, like, they just want a gift basket or something like that. And when you add it up, like, we kind of said we had a $0 marketing budget. And really it was because our marketing was just focused on saying yes to community groups, and then letting people's own enthusiasm, be a marketing tool. Like, if you constantly see Beau's at every golf course that you're on. Well, the problem was not all these golf courses carried us in the clubhouse. People would, they'd see the prize from Beau's and, I love a glass of Beau's. And so then you get a call from the golf course guy, and he's like, oh, I'm going to need to bring in some Beau's. People keep asking for it. And, so like I said, it's just easier. It's easier to say yes. And it's just a better and the right thing to do. So I don't see us changing that model, other than, continuing to have to follow the COVID restrictions. So.
Absolutely. Jen, before moving on to the next question, you spoke about Oktoberfest. I've been before. It's a legendary event, I think, that Beau's hosts every year. The pros of it being online this year is anyone who is listening, whether they are from a different country or whether they are somewhere else across Canada. Could you obviously, explain first thing, what is the Oktoberfest when they can't attend in person, and also explain with the virtual event the benefits for our listeners?
Oktoberfest is the happiest little field party of 20,000 people you'll ever go to. Everybody's wearing little green hats and everybody's having a good time. Officially, it's our signature fundraising event of the year. So it's a big charity fundraiser. Over 2 days, we usually raise in the range of $100,000. We brew a bunch of special beers for Oktoberfest, and then we bring in beers from other craft breweries in Ontario and Quebec. So when you come out, you can usually try, not recommended, but you can try up to 60 beers. You can't try them all. It would be bad. We do beer education in a little area called the School of Bach, which I love. You can do beer, you learn about beer and cheese pairings, and yeah, I like it. I like to explain it as kind of like a choose your own adventure festival, because at any time there's something going on for everybody. There's a Kinderfest kids area. We had Fred Penner play that like a few years ago. It's amazing. And at the same time, you've got people like throwing kegs for heights, and then after that, there's like a malt bag race, and or you could be in the area learning about beer and stuff like that. It's just like, you look it up and you're looking at the program and deciding where you want to be, or if you just want to sit at a table and catch up with friends. There's like 4 or 5 giant tents. I've seen pictures of the actual Oktoberfest, and it looks pretty cool, but I think ours is better. Like just the sort of like sitting at a picnic table with a bunch of strangers. Well, I mean, they become friends over the course of the night, but ours is more, more of an activity. Like you're drinking beer in your space with water and whatever, but like you're being entertained. There's top-notch Canadian bands, every night. We've had Taggart and Torrens hosted it the last 2 years. We had Tom Green host it before that, and that was a lot of fun. Those guys are just a bunch of goofs. We've got Walter Ostenak, Canada's polka king, playing polka tunes all day. It's literally like I said, the best little field party you'll ever go to.
Okay, great. Awesome. And in terms of for this year when it's virtual, what will they be able to expect?
I don't know yet. We're still working on that.
In the works. Awesome. Cool.
Yeah, Oktoberfest in a box. We're gonna do it. We tried it last year, and it went okay, but we want to make it better this year. We did like, you got a box in the mail, and then we did a live broadcast at a certain time where you tuned in and you got to like watch a Steinhold contest, and you got to like, we had 2 bands play, and it was kind of cool, like kind of putting the Zoom version of it together. So it'll be like that again this year, but I think we just want to like up the ante, just make it a little bit better than last year, and then afterwards we'll hopefully have everybody back in Vankleigh Kill for 2022. It'll be a riot.
Okay, great. Awesome. So my forefathers with the same last name as mine, Mummy, were brewmasters in Germany, and they made a world famous malt beer, which was actually called Mummy. Mm-hmm. I noticed that Beau's Mummy beer at Oktoberfest. Was this intentional?
Yes, it was. That was the style. We called the beer Return of the Mummy. And that year, we broke everybody in the brewery who wanted to participate. They put you on a team. So you had one person from brewing, one person from marketing, one person from packaging, one person from finance, and they put you all on a team together. And the teams were challenged with coming up with a beer style, designing a recipe, participating on brew day, and then we had an area at Oktoberfest that year where people could try the beer and vote for their favorite. And So I was on Return of the Mummy team that year, and we won. It's a medieval style of beer. There's not a lot of historical data on the beer style itself, so we were able to get a little bit creative. So what we did was we researched the history of the beer a little bit, and then we also looked at what ingredients we had access to, and so we kind of made it in a gruit style, kind of what we would have perceived would have been that type of beer. And it turned out really good. It was really tasty. So that was fun. I liked the part where I won. But yeah, it's just kind of a fun thing to kind of goof around with the back. And like, not really, people at Oktoberfest didn't really know, the full history that we'd all been kind of scheming and teaming, and, all the recipes were secret from the other teams. And your artwork guy, your marketing person was like behind the label, but no one was supposed to see them. And yeah, just kind of like a little internal Beau's goofiness happening at the same time as, running a brewery.
That's great. And recently, Beau's has launched a new beer called the Jukebox Milkshake IPA. Why is this craft beer one that people should want to try this summer?
Oh, I love it. I've been drinking the heck out of that beer. It's delicious. It's one of the first brand new recipes we've had out in a while. I'm personally not a big fan of milkshake IPAs. I've tried other milkshake IPAs and found them a little bit cloying, or I don't know, just didn't really float my boat. I felt like the sweetness didn't really match the hops. With this beer, this new one that we've got, we brewed it with these hops called Urillo, and they themselves have like a red berry. I get really strawberry flavors. So you're kind of drinking an IPA, a very nice, delicious, balanced IPA. It's got lactose, milk sugar in it, so it's a little bit sweeter, on the sweeter side than the bitterness, like the hop there, but it's balanced out. And then you're getting this funny like strawberry flavor at the same time, and it just doesn't sound like it, but it works. It's amazing. Everybody that I've poured it for so far has been in love with it. So it's 6.5%. You gotta, put your big boy pants on to drink it. But yeah, I'm finding it ridiculously crushable for summer.
Okay, great. I will make sure to have that on my watch list when I go to the LCBO next. So what is your favorite story behind a beer that Beau's has produced?
Can I tell you a story about one we didn't make? Oh, I guess it's kind of related. My favorite story, and it was awful when we lived through it, but we made a beer called Elephant Monsoon that had, it was like a peanut butter and jam beer. And it was so delicious, and it was so much fun. When we sat down with the beer test group, and everybody was tasting it, and half the people said, "Oh my god, it tastes so much like peanut butter," and the other half the people were like, "Oh my god, it tastes so much like jam." And we're like, "Oh, that's how you know it's a perfect recipe." And we made it for February, which is a festival that we do, where we brew 4 different beers over the 4 weeks of February. We like calling it kicking old man winter in the snow pants. Kind of a crap time of year, and people don't really like going out to the bars, so give people a good reason to go out. Peanut allergies were not on our radar when we conceived this beer, and so we realized we had to, as we were putting the beer out, we had to get nut allergy labels all over the kegs, and we had to put an education piece together for the bars. You need to make sure people aren't allergic to peanuts before you serve it to them, because they're not going to be expecting peanuts in their beer. And then we had to clean the lines before and after at every place that served it. And so it was our lab was so stressed out. The sales team was stressed out about it. The repercussions are so serious for someone to have an anaphylactic shock experience with our beer. So we managed it all. Everything was fine. Everything was safe. And then we made another blend where we took Elephant Monsoon, we put it in a barrel, and we released it as part of our barrel series, but we named that beer Definitely Contains Nuts. We were just like so exhausted by the experience, and we're like, all right, this time we're going to make it absolutely clear. And we have never put peanuts in a beer ever since.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that story. That's definitely one to remember, especially when you're behind the scenes.
Yeah.
As the craft beer industry continues to grow, more and more scientific techniques are being utilized on the fermentation and brewing front. What is the worst mistake that happened in beer production for Beau's, and how did you rectify it?
I don't know if I have. Oh, I can't think of a good story about that, actually. There's been a couple of times where, like beer got spilled, blah, 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 whatever. But the thing that consistently happened, I think it's happened like 3 times in the last 15 years, where we pitched the wrong yeast into the wrong tank. Like, it's a pretty airtight system. It's hard to mess up, but every once in a while. So about 9 years ago, I want to say, we accidentally put a wheat yeast into a batch of lug tread. And we're like, oh, shoot. It's we just weren't in a position at that time to dump a batch of beer financially. But beyond that, it actually tasted really good. And so we were torn, because we realized, like, we can't, it would be would be unfair to try and sell this as lug tread. But at the same time, we have this like super tasty beer. So what we did was we went to our bars and restaurants and said, look, we've got this potential new recipe for lug tread. It's called WTF, which stood for wheat fermented lug tread. That's also what we said when we realized we pitched the wrong yeast. We're like, let's just try this recipe. Like, let's make this market testing. We're not going to tell people it's lug tread, but see, like, what do people think of it? And so the bars thought it was really cool. They put it on tap, and then they kept like regular lug tread on tap. And we sent out ballots. People said, which do you like better, like original lug tread or this potential new lug tread? And it was so close. Voting, we got all the ballots back. The voting was so close, where it was like, I think it was like the regular lug tread by 1 vote. And we're like, I guess we're just going to keep making lug tread. But it was neat feedback to get on that particular yeast. And, we're like, all right, well, this is kind of neat. We've got this cool new recipe. We've product tested it. We know people like it. And, we started bringing in that yeast to try out with new recipes and stuff like that. But woo-wee, that was a tough one.
Yeah.
It's like, you don't want to throw the beer away. It still tastes good, but it's not lug tread. So
That's such an interesting story. So this actually takes me to my next question. What separates a good brewery from a great brewery?
I think it's having a reason why you're doing what you're doing. You can have a very good brewmaster, and you can be putting out clean, consistent beer. But I think there are so many craft breweries in Ontario right now. It's not enough anymore to just be making beer, and it's not enough to just say, well, we're local. You've got to have something that you stand for, something that that you believe in, something that you are doing that no one else is doing. Even if you're stumbling a little bit along the way, or even if it's just in progress, because there's enough big craft breweries out there that are really just like a brand, right? And I think it's awful. Like, you pick up this beer and you think you're supporting a local craft brewery, or you think you're supporting craft, and it's just, a fake brand from a Autotron, like giant conglomerate company that's selling you a liquid in a brand. And they're not real people. And I mean, they technically there are people, but it's not what they're pretending to be. So I think like having something that makes you, that you're doing that no one else is doing, and being passionate about being that thing to people, as opposed to 4 ex-businessmen all got together and said, let's start a craft brewery because, everybody, because it's a good way to make money. That's a terrible startup story. and if those guys succeed, I think you're succeeding against the odds at that point.
Absolutely. I think you made a great comment there. Definitely like the ones that have their own tiny little breweries where you could go try, or you could bike to, or kind of like you guys, come off the highway. I think those are the ones, right, where you could see that it's community run or family run or whatever. And that in the long run, they'll probably end up succeeding. Cool.
Yeah.
So my next question, what is the most surprising thing you learned from working at a brewery?
When I went to Seibel in Chicago, which was a fantastic 2 weeks, and I did my brewing training there. Up until that point, I thought, my belief was that the best craft breweries were the ones experimenting with crazy ingredients and, making a fruit leather IPA and making a, triple sour with spinach, and I don't know, like just the creativity was what fascinated me. And when I got back from Seibel, I think the tipping point for me there, I think that was 2016, was I realized that the real talent in making beer is consistency, not crazy recipes, because I think it's a lot easier to mask when you've messed up a beer by throwing in some fruit, or like a super heavy IPA with all those hops. You can't taste flaws in it. Making an incredibly clean and delicate pilsner. There's a brewery called Tooth and Nail in Ottawa that makes an utterly fabulous pilsner. Or making something like Lug Tread and having it taste fantastic day in and day out. That's been the biggest, I think, like aha moment for me in beer, is realizing that consistency of quality is what your brewmaster achieves. And you don't notice it from day to day. All you're like, oh, tastes like Lug Tread. Ooh, tastes like Lug Tread. Man, that tastes like Lug Tread. And there's a lot more that goes into that than coming up with kooky recipes. So I came back with a lot of reverence for our brewmaster Matthew. And I did a lot more shutting up and a lot more listening.
So what advice would you give to someone who has started or who plans to start a brewery business?
That's a tough one. I think I would say one of the things that I would say all of us learned over time is not to pursue growth for the sake of growth to the size that you want to be, and focus on profitability. Get yourself to a point of profitability that you're comfortable with, that you can live with, and grow to the size that you're comfortable with when it comes to how much of your time do you want to give, how many employees do you want to manage, do you want to have work-life balance? Because the pursuit of growth for the sake of growth sometimes takes you to a place that you didn't, where you're maybe not having fun anymore. And I think we almost got to that point. I don't know, like you don't want to like doggedly pursue growth as evidence of success, if that makes sense. Like, define your own success and then live to those standards.
Okay, great. And if someone was to try Beau's beer for the first time ever, what would be your top 3 recommendations?
Are you asking me for the gateway beers? Those beers just lead to other beers, Lug Tread's our firstborn, so gotta say Lug Tread. I think Lug Tread is the perfect desert island beer. Um, I love coming back to it over and over again. It never disappoints me, unless it's old or stale, or a bar has kept it on tap for too long. But it's just, I don't know. I just find it like just complex enough to be interesting, but not so complex that you have to sort of be picking apart and like, do you get a little bit of tobacco? It's just good. I would say I love our Radler. I'm loving our Radler right now. We've got grapefruit juice and grapefruit oil in that mixed with beer, and I think that's a lot of fun. What else do we have that I would say definitely. I'm drinking a lot of our Lugfed 2.5 right now too. It's a really satisfying light beer. I don't know if it's just because it's summer and going to the cottage and sometimes you're day drinking and stuff like that, and you want like lighter stuff, but I'm loving all those right now. That's what's in my fridge, along with that milkshake I forget.
Okay, awesome. And other than Beau's beer, what is your favorite Canadian brewery / beer?
I already gave a tip of the hat to Tooth and Nail. I think they're making incredible beers, and Tweety, who owns that place, was gracious enough to brew with us for a couple of years while he was getting ready to start that brewery. So I've gotta give a tip of the hat there. I also have a friend out in Embrun who has a brewery called Tuc de Brew. His name's Nicholas, and he used to be a sommelier, and I somehow convinced him that beer would be more fun than wine. I really like the model that he's running his brewery with. It's him and his wife, Margot. They're in there all the time. They're giving it their heart and soul, and they've got a really yummy pumpkin beer that they do. And I know not everyone's a pumpkin beer aficionado, but they make a beer called the Jacques Le Lanterne, and it's super nice. I've always try and make sure to get some of that every year. So I'd give a tip of the hat to Nick and Margot's place as well.
Thanks for sharing those. What's next for Beau's market expansion? Have you considered marketing your brands outside of Canada?
I think there's always interest in it. We more interested recently. We were hoping to potentially, and this is still kind of up in the air, but we helped get a brewery started in Rwanda a couple years ago, and they're just about to start building their brew pub. And we had originally talked to them about bringing in their beer and also seeing if we could send some of our beer there. But so there's that potential there with Rwanda. And I know Steve did a trip out to China a couple years ago just to kind of see could we brew there, but we want to do it in a way that would be beneficial to the local communities. So, kind of sussing that out in terms of like what's the availability of local ingredients. Are you actually brewing with ingredients brewed in Rwanda or ingredients brewed in China? How much of the supply chain can we positively impact? So when we do it, we want to do it in a way that's not detrimental to the local businesses, but actually create a positive benefit in the local communities. So all that to say, yes, we've been looking at it for 10 years, but the model that we have in our mind is difficult to achieve without having boots on the ground. So we'll see.
Okay, great. So Jen, as you know, the purpose of this podcast is to inspire people to achieve greatness and enhance their personal well-being. What is your definition of greatness?
It's something that everybody should define for themselves, kind of what I was saying about your own, if you're thinking about starting your craft brewery and you want it to be a great craft brewery, having a unique definition of that for yourself and having a vision and having a vision and then following through on that, and achieving what you set out. I think that's greatness. And I think, doing that in a way that you are conscious of your impact on others, contributing to the greater good and kind of being great in a way that elevates others as well. I don't know if that's helpful. I think it's a very personal definition that kind of has to come from within.
Absolutely. I think that's beautiful. So this brings me to my last question for today. Who is a future guest that you would like to see on this show?
Person, who I got to interview, who was really cool, and I would love to hear him interviewed again on the show. I got to interview for our podcast David Ridgen from Someone Knows Something, and he's very humbly created one of the, if not the most listened to podcast in Canada. I find him such an interesting person. I've listened to most of his podcasts, and it just blows me away. Like, 'cause he does the sort of investigative research into cold cases and stuff like that. And the way that he gets people to like open up and talk to him, and he's just kind of like hanging out in their living room, and all of a sudden, they're reminiscing about, a terrible, like a murder that happened in the community 20 years ago or something like that. But he's just so interesting and affable, and he comes across like, just kind of like a nice guy, but at the same time, I think he is a nice guy, but at the same time, he's like, working on cracking these old cold cases and, dealing with families who, have been impacted by the loss of a loved one and stuff like that. And I think he's a nifty dude. So gotta say, Dave.
Awesome. Great. I will add that to my watch list there. But yeah, no, I just want to take the moment. I want to thank you, Jen. Thank you for being here. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show today. I've really enjoyed getting to know Beau even better. I'm sure my listeners as well. And I'll make sure to, in the podcast notes for everyone that's listening, that we kind of share, the Beau's website and all of the information there that they will need. But yeah, Jen, thanks again for being on today, and I hope to have you back on again in the near future.
Yeah, we'll try and do something super interesting in the next little while to justify that. That's the thing, though, when you've been at something for 15 years, the stories, there's always a ton of stories to tell. So there can always be a volume too. Thanks for having me and letting me talk about my favorite topic on the planet.
Thank you for listening to the Living Your Greatness podcast. If this show has added value, please subscribe, leave a rating, and make a review. Thank you for listening to the Living Your Greatness podcast. If this show has added value, please subscribe, leave a rating, and make a review.